On 3 p.m. Tuesday afternoon, I got the alert that the Trump administration was defending itself in a contempt of court hearing. It essentially sent away one of my Maryland neighbors, Kilmar Garcia, to a torture camp for profit that we paid $6 million of our tax dollars for. And I was like, oh my goodness. It was taking place just 15 minutes away from my house. The Judge Paula Xinis is a parent to kids who my kids went to school with. So I really wanted to see her in action and see it for myself, because you may right now or may have read reports saying that she didn't throw them in jail and she should have issued them contempt of court. I'm going to tell you why she didn't do it. Sis is playing 4D chess. She had so many zingers today. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. I'm so glad I went down there and took feverishly note. I was able to put on my Washington correspondent, former journalist, journalism major hat and get down there and with the other media members, like the professional media that were covering the case. It was really exciting. There was protesters outside. And yeah, so what I'm going to do for you, if you don't want to watch the full video, because I feel like her zingers deserve the time for me to actually express them, like let you know and read them verbatim. I'm going to give you the TLDR in the beginning, meaning too long, didn't read version, just a capsule. So you can just hop off this video and so you get a gist of what she's going, what I mean, like she's playing 4D chess. But if you're interested in the full video, I think it's going to be worth it, because it's like, okay, this is really good. There's some good stuff. And in the end of the day, I think it may work out. It may work out. I don't know. I'm hopeful. We'll see. You'll see what I'm talking about. Watch the whole video if you have the patience and the time. It's going to be pretty long. So quick little background for those of you who haven't been keeping up with this case. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a Maryland man who came to the United States fleeing persecution and gang violence in his native El Salvador. He availed himself to the U.S. government, initially was denied asylum, but eventually in 2019 there was a judge who decided, based on the facts and everything he's presented, that he was not a threat and that he were to stay in the United States. He eventually got a work permit, so he was here authorized and under our laws. He eventually got married, is married to a U.S. citizen, and they have 3 lovely children, including special needs kids. So he was minding his business and he got picked up, and they alleged she was part of this gang called MS-13 without much evidence. The only evidence they had is they have one random uncorroborated witness that said that he was part of some clique in New York, and he'd already proven before in his immigration case that he never even left the state of Maryland. They said he had a jacket on when they picked him up recently, and that jacket is a sign of gangs. So Donald Trump and the Trump administration are just essentially grinding up random brown, Hispanic, Latino men and trying to make good on his promise to get rid of all these gangs. And since there are not that many left, or he doesn't have many, he decided he's going to just pick up random women and children and just send them off to torture camps. And if you caught his hot mic moment a couple of days ago when the president of El Salvador came visit, you know that you're next. So this is something you should care about. Anyway, I digress. Back to the case. Now, here's the thing. Today's contempt hearing was because after the Trump administration already admitted that it was a clerical error, and the different district court, Paula Xinis, decided that, the injunction, preliminary injunction, and temporary restraining order stopping him from being sent away and ordering him to come back was actually affirmed by the 4th Circuit Court of Appeals and then also the U.S. Supreme Court on a 9-0 level. And after that, it came back down to her and she said, please facilitate the return. Now, the TLDR is this case is really about the Trump administration not returning them and trying to say that when the Supreme Court told the district court, Paulina, to facilitate the return, they said facilitate only means do what they can on their end, the United States, domestically make it possible. But internationally, over El Salvador, they're like, that had nothing to do with this. We don't know anything about that. We're not quite sure how he's going to leave the prison and get over here. But in terms of her domestic, all facilitating mean was domestic. That's how they say they interpreted the Supreme Court saying facilitate. And so Judge Paulina said, give me status updates. They've given no status updates showing how they're facilitating it. They're saying, so long as we made it possible for him to come in when he gets here domestically, we've done our part, we're done. Yeah, so you can imagine how that was triggered the plaintiffs to say, please do a contempt. So this hearing was, 1, them asking for a hearing to say, put them in contempt of court. And then 2, we would like expedited discovery, meaning if they're not going to do it and you're not going to issue in contempt, what we would like to do is put on the records. We want them to let us know what is the contract, because you're saying that you cannot do it. It's a contract. It has nothing to do with foreign policy. The plaintiff said in their request for contempt or discovery is that it is the policy, and it's been done before when low-level immigration ICE officials actually facilitate travel back and forth for different people. They've even taken people they've accidentally deported and brought back without it triggering any foreign policy. So this defense about it being up to the El Salvadoran government and part of national security secrets is just a lie. It's the same thing they did, if you follow my case, in the Alien Enemies Act when they first enacted this, and it was up against Judge Boasberg, who was a friend of Neil Gorsuch, and they were trying to pussyfoot around, what do they mean, and just essentially just bobbing and weaving and trying to avoid being direct and being, answering, where they drove him nuts, and he was on the verge of issuing them contempt, and he was trying to find out, who do I need to throw in jail, when the Supreme Court yanked the case from it, vacated it, and that's an issue for another day. But anyway, this is still TLDR. So in the end of the day, the Judge Paula said, you know what, rather than just do a contempt, I need some facts. Either you have a real reason why you're not doing this, and you haven't told me. So we need to get some facts on. I need to apply the facts at the trial court level. If you've watched my videos before, I say it's at the trial court level that the facts are law. So I know the law. I just need the facts now. So before I can issue in contempt and know whether you're not abiding my orders for bad faith or good faith. So the only way I'm going to know that is I need to know the facts. So I'm going to allow discovery is where you find out facts. Discovery, there are 4 different types of discovery. One is like we have presentation of documents. Another one is a deposition. You've heard that before, when people come, sit down, and they're asked questions face to face or via video conferencing or whatever, but it's a deposition sworn under oath. A third kind is just answers, when you just ask questions and they just answer it. Another is interrogatories, when you ask a question, is written. But all of those is under sworn under oath, and the perjury and the penalty of perjury. If you perjure yourself, you can go to jail. We already know that Roger Stone perjures himself on behalf of Donald Trump and was sentenced to jail. So perjury is a serious thing. And I've argued before, that's why the Trump administration, when they do these declarations, and in this case, only once they put a high-level official, but for the most part, they put low-level officials who have personal knowledge of the processes. But never once has Pam Bondi or Marco Rubio put themselves out there. They've had an assistant attorney general, assistant deputy attorney general, whatever, did that. But, and again, I digress. So she said, since we don't know the facts and you're not telling us why, and you're saying you're not doing it, but you're not being clear, discovery will force you to put the contract that you say that you entered into between, that's stopping you from bringing him. So if you say there's a contractual reason or there's some sort of policy, we need to know that. We need to talk to the people so we can find out. And so that's what we're going to do. We need to expedite the discovery. So, and she said, I'm being fair to you because I don't want to assume and make you in contempt of court if it's possible that you have a reason, if you have objections, if you have something like privilege. Yes, if there's a defense, please present those defenses to me, but you have to present those defenses to me. So it's fair. I'm giving you a chance. And if it shows, when you do reveal the facts, if it shows that you've been doing this and lying the whole time, and she kind of hinted that she believes that it's a lie because she said this, I'm going to quote her, I just don't think it's that difficult because they're making it really difficult. I think you want to make it difficult because getting the facts may not be terribly favorable, but it's not that difficult. So she essentially knows that, I know you're lying. This is me, JJ. I know you're lying. She's paying 40 checks. So essentially, it's like, it's a setup. Now, here's your options. And this is the end of the TLDR before I get into the long version. Here's the options. We can go through this process, or you can just bring him back. But we're going to have a 2-week process. So people say, oh my God, it's not going to come back in 2 weeks. No, the Trump administration couldn't see what's ahead of them. They could see the trap that's being laid for them. And they could say, you know what? Never mind. Here he is. We're coming back. We could just, all of this is moot. All discovery, because they do not want discovery. And I'm going to tell you about that later on. It's all moot. We'll just bring him back. So here's what happened after the plaintiffs said that the Trump administration is essentially lying about not being able to facilitate the return because, one, they've done it before, and when they've done it, it has not triggered any foreign policy considerations. Further, in their pleadings, they cite Marco Rubio this weekend on X, formerly Twitter, saying that he had just sent a bunch of people there. So essentially, you're saying you cannot facilitate travel between El Salvador and the United States under this whatever agreement you have, but you're still sending people over to the El Salvadorian torture camp. So which is it? You're lying. Yeah. Judge Zenus said up front, listen here, here's my posture. The Supreme Court could not be clearer. I am properly authorized to act. Mr. Abrego Garcia has already won his injunctive relief on all four factors, and they were conclusively established. It was affirmed not only by the Fourth Circuit, but the Supreme Court, and a 9-0, by the way. We're here today to talk about the scope of the remedy, which means that while expeditionists is the utmost importance, because it is a fact that every day Mr. Abrego Garcia is detained in the torture prison is a day of further irreparable harm. So we're not talking about whether he should be returned. We're talking about how fast the government complies. So this came down to decision of facilitate, because the Trump administration attorney, Drew Ensign, said, well, we interpreted facilitate to mean just do what we need to do domestically, and that's all that matters and constitutionally, in which Judge Zenus was like, I don't know what you're talking about, because that's not my understanding of what facilitate means. And if you're talking about removing domestic obstacles and that being the standard, you haven't presented any evidence, anything, any substance, any cases to back you up. Drew Ensign then said, well, I did cite a concurrent opinion by Sonia Mayor. You want to try to use the liberal justice to justify this? Because Sonia Sotomayor can just be like, hey, I'm going to clarify. Don't be using me that way. And then he also says the ICE directive, to which Judge Zenus says, still, that's not good enough. We need to flesh this out. You're telling me it's well-established meaning of what facilitate means, but you gave me a 7-page pleading. She says, but as a factual matter, we do need evidence in this regard, because to date, the record shows is nothing has been done. Nothing. I've asked for daily reports by individuals with personal knowledge, and I've gotten very little information of any value here. You've given me nothing on the record. Nothing to show you're facilitating his return. So the Trump administration tried to say, well, actually, there was a high-level meeting on Monday with the dictator. He didn't call the guy dictator, but I am. The two dictator and the dictator wannabe met in the Oval Office, and the dictator, he said that he's not bringing him back. To which the judge was like, what are you talking about here? We're in court. That whatever happened there, thanks. I saw that you put it on the record, but my question, to which the High Court, the Supreme Court, squarely affirmed is, what have you done? I've gotten nothing. I've gotten no real response, nor have I gotten any legitimate legal justification for why you're not answering the simple question. And if you're not going to answer the questions that the plaintiffs, within the scope of my order, then you need to justify why. You don't have to bring them, but you got to tell us why. One of the two. You're not doing either. So, and he said, and what am I supposed to do with a press release? This is a federal court. We deal with evidence under oath, not public relations, because on the record, they keep submitting. They're not giving them any updates. They're just submitting public records and restating stuff. And she says that you're talking about this guy talking about, how can I smuggle? You want me to smuggle a terrorist in? Because Drew Ensign read what the dictator from El Salvador said at the Oval Office. And then this is a good one. So Judge Ensign said, so if you were removing domestic barriers, as you say you've been facilitating, then there'll be no need for smuggling, right? He's talking about smuggling, but you're talking about you've already done what you need to do to facilitate it. So where the hell the smuggling part comes in? So dumb, but that was good. And then Drew Ensign mentions, well, Pam Bondi said this during the statement, and Pam Bondi said that they will return him so long as the El Salvadoran president says it's okay. And she says, okay, listen here. This was a good part. Judge Zenus says, we're doing this pursuant to the federal rules of civil procedure, okay? There's no press releases are going on. It's going to be the court the same way, sworn under oath testimony from persons with knowledge, answering to interrogatories, which are signed by the defendants, which is the Trump administration, again, under penalties of perjury, because everything is true and accurate. And if you have any objections to that, you're going to make them. To say, I object to this question, I object to this interrogatories, I object. You can object. The rules, you follow them, you shore up, done, right? Simple, right? So inside was like, he came back and he was just like, well, we said we can facilitate him, but today, which is today meaning Tuesday, on Tuesday they issued another update. In Tuesday update, they said, well, if he comes back to the United States, they're going to just deport him again to another country. That's what he says. This is like, they're not serious. And so this was great. So then she butts in. She said, okay, all right. So you say that you're removing domestic obstacles. And she said, that's a characterization. That's not facts. She said, that's not bound in fact right now. Right? And then she said, you're telling me that if he comes to the United States, then you're going to deport him back. But that's hypothetical because, first of all, what have you done to make him come? You say you remove domestic obstacles, but have you done anything to put that in order to bring him here? And then, no, you haven't. So how are we talking about what you're going to do after the fact when you haven't even brought him here? He's not here. It's moot to discuss whether or not what you're going to do when he gets here. He's not here. He's over in El Salvador. So she says, the Supreme Court has spoken. I'm cleaving as closely as one can cleave to the Supreme Court right now. The Supreme Court, my order is clear. There's nothing to appeal, because he says, well, if you're going to characterize or you're going to state, because she says, I understand, I've done some research what facilitate means. And you're trying to characterize facilitate to mean just domestic movement. That's fine if you want to do that. That's not accurate, but if you want to do that, that's fine. I'm going to put my order together and I'm going to mention it. So then Drew's like, well, if you're going to put your order, please do it on an expedited basis so we can appeal. She was like, ain't nothing to appeal. You've already lost on that. There's nothing to appeal. The judge already said facilitate that. We've moved past that. It's not about whether or not you need to return them. The Supreme Court, that's the top. They're done. You're done on that. We're just talking about bringing them back. So there's nothing to appeal, right? And then he goes back with the Article 3 judges. Well, Article 3 judges can't tell the executive how they should matter with foreign relations. And then she was like, this was another good one. She said, listen here, there's so much daylight between what you keep saying and what the actual posture of this case is. And I'm not doing nothing I read to you in the Supreme Court or my order does any of that stuff. When he's talking about like this Article 3 judges can't interfere. She's like, we're not even, what are you talking about? Article 3 judges can't facilitate. That's not, I ain't asked you to do that. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying bring the band back. You're talking about this other stuff. I'm not getting involved with all these other things you're saying, which is a lot. Like, again, I said, she knows it's a lot. She says, I understand it's not difficult, but you want it to be difficult, like I said in the beginning, because you know when the facts come on the record, it's not going to be in your favor. So that's why you're trying to make it difficult. That's not what we're not trying to answer. I'm trying to say I'm not going to issue in contempt unless I know the facts. Like, why are you not doing it? Bring the documents, bring the stuff so I can know if it's bad faith or good faith. Now, it's a setup because at this point, like I said in the beginning, not wanting to go through all that, it's probably easy for them to save face, find some way. But Trump, I don't know, he's not going to do it because he's so stubborn. It's just say, fine, I don't want to do all this stuff. Let's go. He's still fighting because he's still been fighting AP. He's fighting everybody. He's just like, he's wasting time. These people said they voted for him. I don't think so. They voted for him for egg prices. He does not care. He's done nothing on egg prices. In fact, his trade war is causing all the prices to go up. He's picking unwinnable battles, violating the laws in courts. He's picking with everybody. He's on a revenge tour, picking with marginalized communities in courts, and he's losing. And he's losing and he's costing these Republicans who've been sticking their necks out for them their seats. A lot of them are going to lose their seats and sooner than later. And because he doesn't care, and he's just on this revenge tour and this like picking of cultural war fights and doing nothing and trade. He's the whole country. Everyone's against him. I don't understand. It's less than 100 days. It's a chaos. This is why we told y'all motherfuckers don't vote for this motherfucker. I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? All right. So then Drew inside was like, well, we need to know who's going to be deposed. And she was like, I already tell you who's going to be deposed. You put forth affiant 4 declarations. Those 4 people are going to show up. So then he says, well, one of them is the assistant deputy attorney general, and we're not quite sure if there'll be limitations. She said, what do you mean, like privilege? And he said, yeah, well, if it's privilege, why did you put him in a defiant? Why would you make him a declarant if you're going to privilege? You can't have it both. You can't put him on a public record and then say it's privilege. Pick a side. I was like, my girl got. Then he was trying to talk about something about, well, we're not quite sure what their schedule, what they're doing, they're busy. She was like, yeah, clear the schedule. If you have vacation plans, cancel them. This is important. This is a big case. You can't be telling them because you have vacation, you can't do it. There's no more delay. So clear your schedule. Your 4 affidavits. We're going to have discovery. It's going to happen in 2 weeks, and we're going to find out what's going to happen. So essentially, she's playing chess. The government's making excuses. It's falling apart. She's building the record to determine whether or not they act in bad faith, and if so, contempt is coming. She said the facts would tell me if you're acting in bad faith. That's why you're scared of discovery. That's essentially what she's saying. And so a quick side note, a federal judge struck down Trump's effort to revoke the temporary protective status for Venezuelans, Cubans, and Haitians. The judge said it was racist, and it is. Like, before Biden went out of office, he extended the temporary protective status for those 3 countries. I don't know how many people. And the standards for removing them is really deep to change it. And this Trump administration, like every single thing, they don't bother to do the record. They don't bother to do the work. They're just acting without doing the work. And that's why they keep getting overruled. So that's why it got banned, stopped. And similarly, when the Supreme Court justices, rather than declare Donald Trump's use of Alien Enemies Act as unlawful and not applicable because they're declaring members of a gang that aren't really part of a nation under this act, whatever, rather than interpret that that's a mistake or whatever, they instead say, we want you guys to give everyone due process, which is great on a 9-0 basis. However, the habeas corpus standard is a little bit different than if it's a little bit different thing. They're essentially setting up, making it harder for these people. But that's okay, because if there's no evidence that they're in a gang, it doesn't even matter. They'll be able to beat the gang thing if they want to. And they also said it needs to be filed in the place where you're detained, which doesn't make any sense because they detain people one place. Like I mentioned in the previous video, this guy named Adrian Gil Rojas, they detained him in New York and took him to Texas. So if he were to fight his case, he'd have to fight it in Texas, which he did. But it's like, that's stupid because you're pulling people all over the country and then you're just making it difficult. And essentially by telling them to, for example, pulling it from Judge Boasberg, who was hearing the Alien Enemies Act challenge and saying, well, it has to be where they're detained and it can't be a general class. They set it to Texas thinking that that's going to be protecting. But what happened is a judge in Texas ruled in favor of some plaintiffs there and certified a class. So anyone who's detained right now in Texas now is protected by that case. And a judge in New York certified it as to detainees in New York. And recently, a judge in Colorado. So Supreme Court could have easily just said, stop doing this mess. Instead, they set it up so we have all these different cases. When if Donald Trump were to challenge all these different cases, so Supreme Court is looking at this docket of all this stuff when they didn't have to deal with that. And that's what Justice Sotomayor and Justice Elena Kagan was warning them would happen if they did this. You could easily dispense of it, but you're just doing this, anything. Anyway. So last thing, the end of the point is like they backed themselves into it by trying to define the word facilitate so narrowly to not answer the question and irritating the judge. And she granted expedited discovery to confirm. So for people saying, well, why didn't she throw him in jail? She's playing chess. Like Tanya Chuckin was like, I need a record. We're not doing press releases. I need you to swear on oath under perjury. So they're trying to avoid it. Like I mentioned in previous videos, Pam Bondi's not putting her signature on it. No. You don't see Marco Rubio. He's not an attorney, but you don't see any of the top dogs putting themselves out there. They're sending their little minions on there. So yeah, so this is what accountability looks like. Judge Paula Xinis, she's showing the law matters. Trump team has no legal basics, no coordination, no credibility, like no law. It's just political war and revenge, chaos. It's a mess. So I'm 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away. So let me know. Let's discuss more. I hope you enjoyed the whole summation around rounding it up. But yeah, so it's good to get like the full like throated like understanding and context of everything. So anyway, it was a really good assignment, but she was great because she was terse and she was like to the point, and she didn't play. The whole session lasted like, it was under an hour. It was like 40 minutes, and she was just like back and forth, back and forth. Drew Ensign was stumbling over his words, but that's okay because that's common. The plaintiff's attorney looked a little bit nervous, and she presented from behind the desk, but she did a good job. She didn't have to say much because it's kind of like, it's a win. Like, your client wins, your client should be returned. I saw his wife gave a press conference before the hearing. After the hearing, the attorneys came out and explained to people. There was rallies, lots of protesters, lots of great signs. I'm going to put it here on the side. And overall, it was a good session. I think it was really good. I think it's a good sign. I think and some people say that they don't think he's alive. A lot of people saying that, and I can understand, because that's what the prison's known for, being a terrible prison, and I'm sure people might not have made it out. It's a terrible thing. It's a horrible place. It's a torture camp, but people do survive it, and it's possible that he's being protected. People just assume the worst of prisoners, but I know people have gone to prison, people in jail, including family members, and it is tough, but people make it out, and it's not as bad as the movie and TVs. I'm not saying prisoners don't get shanked and stuff like that. That does, but that's not necessarily a common thing. And even though he was escaping being blackmailed back when he was a kid, I don't know, he was a little bit younger, that whatever gang that was, I don't think they're coming after him thinking about shanking him. They were trying to like blackmail him for something long time ago. He's been long gone since. I don't think they're holding that grudge over what might be a really simple thing. So I firmly still believe that he's alive. I don't think so. But anyway, my senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, is going there tomorrow. I'm praying for him because I just finished reading about the Jim Jones, where there was a congressperson who went down to the Jones camp to just see what's going on. I'm saying we're just like, take some security, go with other members of Congress. Us who remember the Jim Jones thing, I was like a baby, but I know about that case. I'm scared for him. I'm praying for him. But I think that'd be great. He's going today, which is Wednesday, and hopefully he gets access. He wants to see proof of life. I don't know if the dictator who came to meet with Donald Trump would facilitate it, but it's a for-profit prison. Chris Van Hollen is a distinguished member of Congress. They could put up a roadblock, but it'll look bad. I'll tell you right now, if he goes down there and they put up resistance, and this is the person who met with Donald Trump, it's really going to look bad. My husband says he doesn't think this is moving MAGA. I really do think the 77 million people is eroding some of those people who said, well, we wanted them gone and we not like them, but I don't think they like this aspect of it, just pulling up people. Even if you're denying them due process, kick them out the country, but don't send them to a torture prison. I think a lot of people are like not cool with that. I don't know. My husband doesn't have much faith in the MAGAs. I really don't either, but whatever. Yeah. So I digress. I went off on a whole new different tangent of it. But anyway, at the end of the day, I think that they're eventually going to release him. I think he's alive. I hope Chris Van Hollen has a good trip and is confirmed that he's alive and he's brought back. I described him, I don't know if anyone else has described him, as this administration's Elian Gonzalez. For those of you who remember that case, it was Bill Clinton and it was Janorino, and he could also be described as this generation's George Floyd. But unlike George Floyd, who people try to say, well, he was on drugs and he was a thug, and they could say that about this guy, but it's really hard for that to stick. But it's similar to George Floyd in that a lot of people are rallying behind him. I saw that today, all those signs saying, let him go. It's one man people look after, that one man's freedom. So, and there's a lot of people who are willing to give up their privilege and time and effort to secure or pray or hope or rally or call for his release and for him to be set free. And it's the opposite of what the Trump administration wanted. So that's good. I hope that's people. JJ Legal.